The ingredients in a homemade chicken noodle soup are pretty standard, but the technique in which you cook it makes a world of difference. And I'm gonna show you a technique for getting an amazing depth of flavor for a delicious pot of chicken noodle soup in no time at all. Welcome to the Salt and Pepper, where we cook for real life using real food and we keep it real simple. Today we're gonna make a big pot of chicken noodle soup. This is like an old-fashioned chicken noodle soup, so I'm gonna use egg noodles, but you could switch those up, and I'll get into that in just a little bit. But let me get the chicken that we're gonna use for our chicken noodle soup. And what I'm using is bone-in, skin-on thighs, okay? Now, you could use bone-in, skin-on breast. That would be perfectly fine. But if you want to get the amazing depth of flavor in a very short time, you do want to use the bones and you do want to use the skin, okay? Because what we're going to do is make a really flavorful broth for our chicken noodle soup. And we're going to do that in no time at all. So, first thing I want to add in are 2 stalks of celery, and they are just cut in half. 2 carrots, not even cut, not even peeled, and 1 small Vidalia onion that's just chunked up there. Put those into the pot. We're gonna put in 6 cups of just plain chicken stock, or you could use water and chicken bouillon, that's fine. But if you're gonna use chicken bouillon, you're gonna cut back on the salt in the seasoning blend. So I'll just pour that in. There we go. And now we want to get in our seasoning blend, which is going to start with 2 bay leaves. So put those in. Then we're going to put in 1½ teaspoons of fine grind sea salt, 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, and 1/2 teaspoon of thyme leaves. Now these are dried thyme leaves, but they are not to be mistaken for ground thyme, which is a little bit stronger of a flavor. So you can either omit it if you don't have thyme leaves, or you could put a pinch of ground thyme in. That would be okay. But don't put 1/2 teaspoon, it'll be overwhelming. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and put that in, and now get our chicken in, which this is 2½ pounds of chicken. You can use between 2 and 3 pounds of chicken, and like I said, you can use the bone-in, skin-on breast if you prefer breast meat in your chicken noodle soup, or the thighs like I'm doing. And I will tell you that if you're not a fan of chicken thighs, you're not alone. My husband does not like chicken thighs. And when I tell him I'm making a chicken noodle soup, and he's like, oh, I hope that's breast meat you're using, you know, not the thighs. And I just say, yeah. He doesn't know the difference. So honestly, it is so much more flavorful to use the thighs that I really recommend you give it a try. All right, so that's all done. Now we are done for right now. That's all you have to do. So dump, easy breezy. Put the pressure lid on. Now you could do this in the Ninja Foodi 6½ quart. You could do this in the Ninja Foodi 8 quart. You could do this in any 6 or 8 quart Instant Pot. And if you have a smaller model of the Ninja Foodi, like the 5 quart or a smaller Instant Pot, you can still do it, but cut the recipe in half, okay? Just to make sure you don't go over that max fill line. Now we're gonna turn the Ninja Foodi on. We're gonna go to high pressure, and we wanna go for 20 minutes. You can also do this with frozen chicken, okay? That's no problem. Just add 5 minutes to the cook time and you should be good to go. Make sure your valve in the back is to the seal position. And we have 6 cups of liquid cold chicken in there. It's gonna take a little while to come up to pressure. So it's gonna take probably about 15 minutes maybe to build the pressure. Then we're gonna pressure cook for 20 minutes. We're gonna do a 5-minute natural release, and then we'll get on to the next step and making our chicken noodle soup. Okay, so the pin in the back has now dropped, and we can open up the lid. You definitely want to do that away from you because it will be very steamy. All right, so now what I like to do now is just remove the chicken from the pot here. Remember, this is extremely hot, so be very careful. So I'm just gonna take each piece of chicken out and just put them on a cutting board to cool. And I'll grab the bay leaf if I see them. This smells amazing. Oh my gosh. All right, let's see if I can find that other bay leaf. If not, no worries, I'll get it later. Nope, I don't see it right now. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna set these aside just to let them cool. We don't need them for a little while. And now there's a couple things you can do at this point, okay? If you wanted to not finish your soup today, you could certainly put this in the refrigerator after it cools down some and let it set up and then take the fat layer off. But I don't do that. I just keep going. I leave the fat from the chicken skin in there. It really gives a great flavor. But if you wanted to skim it off, you absolutely can. You just need it to chill down and then the fat layer will come up to the top. So now I'm just gonna grab out the vegetables. We don't need to use those anymore. Now, of course, you could chop them up and put them back in. That's fine. That would be no problem at all. But I just usually take them out. And now we've got this really delicious, wonderful stock here for the base of our soup. All right, let me grab my other tool here, make it a little easier. And there's that other bay leaf. All right, so once I get most of the larger pieces out, then I strain my broth. You do not have to do this. So let me grab my ladle, and now I'm just gonna keep straining through and be very careful with this. Can you hear my chicken? My rooster? That makes me laugh every time. All right, when I get down to where there's just about 2 cups left, then I feel comfortable picking up the pot. I do not recommend picking up the pot and trying to pour it into a strainer when it's full. I've burned myself that way, so. All right, let's see if all this is gonna fit in here. It should. All right, perfect. Now we've got beautiful, clear broth. But I also strained out some of the thyme and probably some of the pepper, but that's okay. What I'm gonna do, what I did in the beginning, is separate the spices. So I'm gonna add a little bit more in before we cook the rest of our soup. So we'll get the vegetables in and the noodles in, and then it's a real short pressure cook time, and we'll be serving up some delicious soup. First thing though is I'm gonna go ahead and rinse this out so we get any of these little areas that just don't look that good. And we don't want that back in our beautiful clear broth that we just strained. Okay, carefully pour back in the chicken stock. Or again, you can let it chill, get the fat cap off of the top. That's perfectly fine to do. But I think the fat really adds a lot of flavor. Now we're gonna add in the rest of our vegetables, which is 2 celery stalks, which are just chopped up into little pieces, probably about 1/2 inch thick. And then about 1/4 to 1/2 inch diced small Vidalia onion. Add those in. We're gonna add in 2 carrots that again have been peeled and sliced in about 1/2 inch slice there. And we're gonna put in the seasoning. So, like I said just a few minutes ago, I kept out 1/2 teaspoon of thyme and 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. And I add them in now so that there is some thyme and some pepper in our finished soup. If you weren't going to strain, you could add it all in at the beginning. If you don't like pepper, because this chicken noodle soup has a slight peppery taste, cut back on the pepper for sure. I'm going to put that in right now. Then we're going to add in our noodles. Now, what I'm using for this recipe is 3 cups or about 8 ounces of medium-sized egg noodles. And egg noodles come in various sizes. So there's the extra wide, which are really big. There are the medium, which is what I'm using. No, I'm sorry. These are the wide. There's the wide, which are probably most common. But then I took it to a smaller one, which is the medium. So they're just a little bit smaller, and I prefer them in the soup. But it is totally up to you, okay? You can use any kind of egg noodle you'd like. If you're gonna use like a spaghetti noodle or something like that, you might want to decrease the pressure cook time to 0 minutes, or just simply put this on sear saute and saute it for a while. You could pressure cook your vegetables to make sure that they're completely done, and then just use the sear saute to get the little spaghetti noodles done, because they might cook a little bit quicker. But I found that this works perfectly fine for the medium-sized egg noodles. We're gonna pressure cook for 1 minute with a 5-minute natural release. Oh, and one thing I will say about the previous pressure cook time, it took 19 minutes for the pot to come to pressure, and then we pressure cooked for 20 minutes, and we did a natural release of 5 minutes. That natural release, you could let that go all the way. So it's not something you have to be standing here or worried about. You could let it natural release fully and then leave it on keep warm for, a couple of hours if you're busy doing something. So certainly you could set this up to make itself, and then at dinner time, you could just come back and do this part. So it is pretty easy, and you can definitely do that. All right, now we'll put our pressure lid back on, and we're gonna hit the pressure button. We want to go down to 1 minute. Now, the time to pressure will not be as long this time because we are already hot. So our broth is already pretty hot. So I would think maybe 5-6 minutes or so, maybe 8. And then we'll go under pressure for 1 minute, and we'll do a 5-minute natural release. And then we are all done while we add in the chicken. So we do have to do that, or it wouldn't be chicken noodle soup. It would just be a noodle soup, right? All right, so while the Ninja Foodie is coming up to pressure to cook our vegetables and our noodles, and I've let the chicken thighs cool down a little bit, I'm gonna go ahead and take the meat off the bone so we can add that back in and finish up our chicken noodle soup. So it's pretty easy. I just peel the fat off, and these are cool enough to touch, so just let them sit until you can actually handle them. So I peel the fat off, and then I just take my fork and just sort of get the meat off. And I'll look through it just to make sure I don't have anything that I don't want in my soup. All right, so I've got all of the chicken meat off of the bones, and I don't throw those away. So what I do is I take these and I bag them up and I put them in the freezer, and then when I have about 3 or 4 pounds, I will make some bone broth from them. So definitely you do not have to throw them away, or you can throw them away if you'd like. So we're all done with that. And now we have our chicken. And I keep mine in larger pieces, but you could cut them up smaller if you like. I find that it will shred a little bit more in the soup, so I just leave them in bigger chunks, but that's totally up to you. So it took about, I would say, 6 to 7 minutes for the pot to come to pressure. We pressure cooked for 1 minute, and now we're doing a 5-minute natural release. And then I will release the pressure, add the chicken, give it a stir, and give it a taste. Ooh. All right, so this is a teaching moment here because something happened that has never happened when I made this recipe before. But I did the natural release at about 5 minutes and 15 seconds or something. And about 45 seconds after that, I started getting a lot of sputtering, and some of the, liquid was coming out instead of just steam. So if that happens, just turn your valve back to seal. What that means is there's a lot of volume in the pot, it's very hot, and the release happened too quick. Now, like I said, I've made this recipe several times, and that's never happened before, so it's kind of interesting. But these are the variables we run into. Did these chicken thighs give off more juice? Did they have more fat? There's always little things that can happen. So if that happens to you, just turn the valve back to seal, wait another minute, and then release the pressure, and hopefully it'll work just fine. I'm getting a little bit more foaming, so I'm just gonna turn that back to the seal position, because you don't want a big mess all over your counter or anything like that. So I'm just gonna turn it back to the seal and wait another minute. And now I'm gonna hope my noodles aren't overcooked. This is what happens though. This is real life, guys. And the thing is, I wouldn't change the recipe. I'd still call for a 5-minute natural release because I don't want to overcook my noodles. So I have made this recipe. I think this is the 4th time that I'm making it, and the previous 3 times this did not happen. So it's interesting. These things always seem to happen on the videos though. I can't understand it. All right, let's try again. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and open the lid. It looks good, but I can see, so you can see how it was boiling up with the way that the pot has all the stuff on the side. So that's really interesting to me, because like I said, it has never happened before. But anyway, the soup looks gorgeous. I mean, it is absolutely beautiful. Oh my gosh. And the noodles look perfectly cooked. So I don't think that's an issue. So I think in the written recipe, just to be on the safe side, I'm going to go with a 7-minute natural release, because I do not want this to happen to you guys. All right, so now we can go ahead and add in our meat. Now be careful when you do that too, because you don't want to plop it and have it spray, because this soup is super, super hot right now. And then the last thing that I do is I add about a 1/2 tablespoon of dried parsley. That is mostly for color. And then give this a stir around. Oh my gosh, this looks so good. And while I'm letting this cool off a little bit, I'm gonna go ahead and turn the pot off now. While I let this cool in my bowl, I'm gonna show you the pressure cook lid, and I'm gonna show you what I think may have happened and why I got that little sputtering and didn't in the past, because I think I might have a reason for that. All right, so let's go ahead and dish out some of this delicious chicken noodle soup into my bowl. Oh, this looks so good. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Okay, I'm gonna put this to the side here, and then I'm gonna show you the lid, and hopefully it's not too hot for me to handle. So I can see where there are remnants of thyme leaves and stuff like that all on my lid. Now, I'm also seeing some other things here that really should not even be in the soup, because we strained it. So that leads me to believe that my error was not looking at the lid after the first pressure cook time. So when we did the chicken and all the seasonings and stuff like that, I didn't even pay attention to the lid. I washed out the pot, but not the lid. So I would definitely recommend rinsing out the lid. And then there's a cap here on the bottom, and if that gets clogged, it can cause some issues, and it is. And so there is the culprit right there. I can see these little bits of thyme leaves right in this area here. So that's the issue. hasn't happened before. In fact, it's never happened to me as long as I've been using a pressure cooker, but it has happened to other people. So it is a good idea to take this cap off and clean it. And I do clean it regularly, but I didn't think to clean it in between these two pressure cooks. So I will do that in the future because this little time leave is the culprit here. And there you go. So now I will rinse all this off and rinse the cap really well, and everything will be good to go for the next pressure cook time. All right, let's get to eating our soup. It smells amazing, like I can't even tell you. And it smells like it's been cooking all day long. It's just so good. It's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous color. And I love leaving the fat in there. I know some people will probably be against that, but it gives this beautiful glistening to the soup, and oh my gosh, it gives so much flavor. So let's try these noodles real quick because of my little mishap with the pressure release time. They're perfect, absolutely perfect. Oh my gosh. This soup is so amazing. All right, carrot. Perfect. And I know the chicken's perfect, but let's give it a try anyway. This is simple perfection, and it's done in about an hour, and let me tell you, it tastes like a soup that you would take 2 days to make. And I used to take 2 days to make my soups until I got the pressure cooker, and now you can get them done in about an hour, and it's amazing. So I hope you enjoy this one.